Broadcasting from the world headquarters of the National Floor Safety Institute is America's slip and fall guy, Russ.
You know, when we think about safety, we oftentimes look at organizations, government entities like OSHA. Some even look at the Americans with Disabilities Act or NIOSH. But long before there was an OSHA, there was a National Safety Council, chartered back in 1913 and actually established under an act of Congress in 1953. The National Safety Council has really led the way in identifying and preventing workplace-related accidents and preventable injuries. Joining us this morning is Kim Shambrook, who is the Senior Director of Workplace Training and Consulting for the National Safety Council. And we welcome you this morning, Kim.
Well, thank you so much, Russ. I really appreciate the opportunity to visit with you today.
Well, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came about working with the National Safety Council.
Sure. Well, I started my career in higher education and then moved into association management, focused on professional education. And before coming to the National Safety Council, I was back in higher education as president of a local college here in Chicago. And so when the opportunity came up to join the National Safety Council, I was familiar with them for a number of years and knew it was an organization that I felt like I wanted to kind of come to and help with. So my role here at the council is to oversee all of our safety education and training, as well as our services areas. So that involves overseeing our driver safety, our first aid and emergency preparedness, all of our workplace training and consulting, as well as the Campbell Institute and our research and surveys area.
Well, although I did a brief intro into the National Safety Council, tell us a little bit more about what the council does, who are their members, what are kind of the activities that you're focused on?
Sure. Well, as you mentioned, the National Safety Council came about well over 100 years ago in the early 1900s, at a time where safety was just considered a cost of doing business. So when people had an accident or more tragically a fatality in the workplace, businesses looked at that. Well, that was just a matter of an accident. They happen, and that's a cost of doing business. Tragically, in 1913, there was the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire in New York City. 147 women tried to escape that fire. Tragically, most of them didn't make it. That was the time where a group of civic leaders came together and said, you know what, enough is enough, and we need to bring about some change. And so they formed the National Safety Council. We're a 501c3 nonprofit, as you mentioned, chartered by Congress. We have 22 chapters across the country, and our mission back in 1913 was to eliminate preventable deaths. That still holds true today. Our mission states that we are here to eliminate preventable deaths at work, at home and communities, and on the road through our leadership, research, education, and advocacy efforts. So that being said, we are a member organization of 15,000 members. Those are corporate members. That covers, those 15,000 members cover about 6.5 million employees, which rounds out to about 12,000 safety professionals. We have a number of activities happening in all of those areas that I mentioned, including our education and training, our research. Our Campbell Institute is renowned as our Thought Leadership Institute. Probably what NSC is one of the things we're best known for is our annual Congress and Expo every year. It's the world's largest gathering of safety professionals, and so that happens in the fall every year. Things that make us, sort of a respected name in safety is that we're very data-driven. And I think, on this topic of slips, trips, and falls, we have a number of data points around that establish why this is an important factor that we need to take into account. But as an organization, we are focused, as I mentioned before, on eliminating preventable deaths in those three areas: workplace, communities, at home, and on the roads.
Well, I have personally been a member of the council for over 25 years. And for many folks who know the council or the Green Cross for Safety logo, you do really wonderful work. In fact, you mentioned collecting data. I don't know if you call it injury facts or accident facts, Kim, but the information that you catalog through your research group, and of course you work closely with, I believe it's the Centers for Disease Control, on collecting that data. But how big of a problem, as far as your data reveals, are workplace-related slips, trips, and falls?
Yeah, well, Russ, thank you. I mean, you mentioned our Injury Facts, which is our free online tool. So for your listeners, I think this is a really good resource for them to take a look at. So Injury Facts is where we aggregate data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the CDC, and other government agencies to help us determine what are the leading cause of deaths and injury in the workplace. And sadly, slips, trips, and falls is the number 3 top leading cause of work-related injuries. So we know that it's a big problem, and we know that there are things that we need to do to be mindful of what that impact is. So when you look at that being the 3rd leading cause of injuries in the workplace, that age group, the people that are most at risk for that, our data shows, are people 55 and older. Transportation, warehousing, construction, and agriculture are the big industries where we find that slips, trips, and falls are happening most often. And, not only is there personal injury to the individual, but also from a company standpoint and a cost of that, those workers who get injured through a slip, trip, or a fall, typically lose 12 days of work, which can create a really big cost for the organization. So we know that this is important, and we know we need to pay attention to it. So that's on the injury side. And then when you look at the data that shows us that falls from heights in particular is one of the leading causes of death, preventable deaths in the workplace. So things like ladder safety, those sorts of things are really, really important. So the data points us in the direction of focusing on where the most injuries are occurring and where the most preventable deaths are occurring, because we believe that we can create solutions to help mitigate that and drive those numbers down. So our goal is to drive that number to 0. So through our education, research, and training, we hope to help have an impact on that.
Well, one thing I can attest to is the council's commitment to prevention. For many who may or may not know this, you played an integral role in the Click It and Ticket program, the federal government-sponsored awareness campaign to encourage people to wear seatbelts, which, of course, has been a huge success. In fact, in some ways, too much of a success. It used to be where automobile fatalities are the leading cause of emergency room visits in the country, but now it's falls. Is that right, Kim? Falls are the leading cause of emergency room visits in the country.
9.2 million people in 2016 were treated in emergency rooms for fall-related injuries.
Wow, over 9 million Americans. I know that number has continuously risen year after year. I remember just a few years ago, it was only, I shouldn't say only, but it was around 7 million.
Yeah.
So what's really driving this, Kim? What's going on?
Well, I think there are a few factors. This is the first time in our history that we've had 4 generations working in the workplace at the same time. So workers who were typically retiring are now working longer than they had in the past. And as I just mentioned before, from a demographic standpoint, those that are subject to slips, trips, and falls are kind of those older workers. So we have workers who are working longer in the workplace. I think, there's a compliance issue just in terms of helping people to understand the importance of hazard recognition. Things like uneven floor space, objects on the floor, a lot of these injuries are occurring in the food and hospitality industry, so having the right footwear and all of that. So there's a huge awareness that we need to do to help people understand that it's not just normal to have, those obstructions on the floor. You need to take action around mitigating those. So Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it's such a common point of view where in my work and working for decades in this field, when I'll ask a property owner, so do you have a slip and fall or a trip and fall problem? And they look at you kind of funny and say, well, of course we do. That's why we have insurance. And it's almost like a backwards view of prevention. Many property owners, not all, but many simply accept the reality of people are going to fall. They see them as in many ways non-preventable, when in fact most are preventable. In fact, tell us a little bit about what you're doing on the education and the training side of addressing this problem.
Yeah, so I think, there's a few ways I think that we can address the problem. I mean, first and foremost, our partnership with your organization, NFSI, I think is a solid one, and it helps, us work jointly together to help, sort of collaborate around where we need to focus our efforts. Secondly, I think whatever we can do through helping to promote federal legislation and regulatory measures, I think is an important step that we have to take as well. So that's where, working with the federal government to help understand that this is an area that we can legislate around. Certainly thought leadership in this. So, being a member of the NFSI board and bringing together other experts in that. But when it comes to education and training, we're doing a number of things. So we have a number of free online tools that our members can get advantage of, things like safety talks and hazard recognition tools, and the importance of making a safe environment free of slips, trips, and falls. So there are those free resources that exist. We also have a program called our Slip, Trip, and Fall Prevention Training Program that's available to folks, and that is an instructor-led program that can either be a 2 or a 4-hour program. That's available on our website, and I know NFSI helped to develop that. And then we're looking at what do we need to develop moving forward. We have our Advanced Safety Certificate Program, which is a 12-day certificate program that's sort of on the fundamentals of safety. The Principles of Occupational Safety and Health is the cornerstone course of that certificate program. So we're incorporating content and information within that course around slips, trips, and falls, again, because the data shows us that this is in the top 3 leading causes of injuries in the workplace. So that, and then we're also working with you all and others to develop some online resources through training that can help with that. So I think, looking at where's the greatest need, what kind of materials do we need to develop? What kind of training do we need to sort of enhance and build out? And how can we create awareness around this is not just an issue that can't be addressed and should not be addressed only through your workers' comp insurance program. So
right.
So I think it's all about kind of that coalescing and making sure that we have an integrated approach when it comes to addressing this.
Well, like the NFSI, the National Safety Council has a very diverse group of members, many of which come from all walks of life. Tell us a little bit about how you think your membership will receive this new approach in terms of training and kind of drilling down on the problem. I mean, you have a very wide range of members internationally. How do you think they're going to respond to this, Kim?
Well, I think the best way members respond to it is when you show them the data. When you say that over 9 million people end up in an emergency room due to injuries, whether that injury occurred at work or at home, that still has an impact from an ROI standpoint, from a business standpoint. So I think if we're able to quantify the cost of someone being out for 12 days due to, on average, 12 days due to an injury in the workplace, I mean, that really hits the bottom line of a company. So there's that, like what is it costing my company just in terms of lost work time? What is it costing my company in terms of increased worker comp premiums? How, unfortunately, if that person cannot come back to work, the cost of retraining or rehiring someone to take that individual's place. So I think that, where it really hits home for our members and for our companies that we work with is, what is the financial impact of not doing anything around this? So if we're able to quantify that and show that there's a significant cost, it's going to cost you more not to do something than it will to cost you to do something. So I think that's how it will resonate with them. And then certainly I think as we start to tell the story about the impact of, people who are directly affected by this, and how in most cases it's something that's easily fixable to prevent it. So I think having that personal touch and telling that story also is an important factor.
Well, the council has been very, very focused on work-related injuries. But in the last, 10 years or so, Kim, you've also started to address out of the workplace injuries, which, of course, falls of all types are a big issue. Do you see kind of addressing both of these areas, both in the workplace and out of the workplace?
Oh, yeah, well, absolutely. So, kind of linking back to our mission that the three places that we center are at home and community, on the roads, and in the workplace. So when it comes to home and community, a very negative byproduct and an area by which the council has become really invested over the course of the last few years is the opioid crisis. So when you look at people who are suffering from falls, whether they happen in work or at home, if they are to help mitigate pain prescribed, an opioid, the end result of that, I think you could open up any newspaper or look online at any news report. I mean, this is a crisis that our country is facing. So, whatever we can do to help eliminate the risk first. And then thus, if you eliminate the risk, you eliminate the injury or death. And then certainly the person then doesn't have to be treated where there are also risks associated with that. So I think it's a little bit of a, connected view here. And I think that there are things that we can start to look at more holistically and say, as a human being, you need to be aware that the incident of you falling due to some sort of hazard that exists, whether that's in your home or at work, can have a significant and profound effect not only on you as an individual, but also could result in a factor that is even more dangerous and than the actual slip happening from the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I spend a lot of time talking about the unintended consequences of an accidental fall. For example, if an elderly parent falls at home and becomes severely injured and can't care for themselves, that affects the whole family. Yeah, I mean, what do we do at the house? What do we do with the dog? Who's going to take care of mom? Right. The impact of an accidental fall is so wide ranging, and it touches so many more lives, including those who are employed. If someone has to take time off of their job to care for an elderly parent that was injured as a result of a fall, that of course affects their workplace responsibilities.
You are absolutely spot on with that, Russ, and I think that's why the collaboration between NFSI and NSC is so important. There's strength in numbers. So the more that we can raise the voice around this issue, the more impact that we can have, because there are unintended consequences of all of this that we need to be mindful of.
Well, two big announcements are that, number one, the NFSI will be presenting, I think, two projects at the NSC's Congress this September in San Diego. And then next year, we will be, co-sponsoring a 2-day symposium on the subject of slip, trip, and fall prevention. That'll be sometime next summer, which we look forward, as you outlined, the collaboration, the partnership between the National Safety Council and the NFSI, and we look to build on that. And I really want to thank you so much, Kim, for spending the time with me this morning, talking about the problem of slips, trips, and falls, but more importantly, on how the National Safety Council is really taking a leadership role in addressing this problem, both in the workplace and outside of the workplace. And I really want to, again, thank you, Kim, for all of your commitment, and encourage all of my listeners to become a member of the National Safety Council. We will be doing some joint projects, both on our websites and through other media. And so stand by. But with that, I'd like to go ahead and, again, thank you, Kim, for spending the time with us this morning. And keep up the good work.
All right. Well, thank you, Russ. It's been a pleasure. And, we love to be a resource for folks. So for your listeners, if you want more information about what we do at the National Safety Council, just check us out at nsc.org.
Very good. Well, we've been spending some time with Kim Shambrook, Senior Director of Workplace Training and Consulting for the National Safety Council. And until next time, thanks for listening to my podcast. This is Russ Kenzior, America's Slip and Fall Guy. Take care.